before we do that, let's talk about what happens if we start to add these mineral acids, sulfuric or phosphoric acid. So these mineral acids are going to cause elimination. And if you do a primary alcohol, which cannot form a carbocation because it's primary, then the elimination will have to be an E2 mechanism. And E2 is super slow. Not always, but it's slow when you have sulfuric acid present. In a strongly acidic solution, E2 is slow because there's no strong base. And that's what's required for a relatively quick E2 reaction to occur. So if instead you treat a tertiary alcohol, which can form a relatively stable carbocation, once again, we'll put stable in quotation marks. Now the reaction